good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, it's
great.
wonderful to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today.
Ah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to getting into your work and the awareness that you're putting out into the world.
Mhm.
Before we do that, I want to ask you this. One of the
Yes.
more momentous things that we went through in our lifetime was this pandemic 4.5 years ago. And it created so much of a shift and change in all of us. How
Yeah.
much of living through that time period has affected the work and what you're doing right now with your life?
Um, it's actually affected my business greatly. I've completely restructured my business basically. So I started off in 2019, and then at the end of 2020 I decided to open a shop. Bricks and mortar shop.
Yeah.
So I ran an online plastic free zero waste shop. So everything was reusable, refillable, plastic free alternatives to everyday items like toothbrushes, bamboo toothbrushes, toothpaste tabs, items for your kitchen, toilet brush, wooden toilet brushes, that kind of thing. So among that was some period products as well, reusable period products. So I discovered in May last year that the bricks and mortar retail just wasn't for me. So I have completely restructured my business again. Since 2019, I used to give talks and workshops, so over the past 6 years, I've given talks and workshops with local libraries, Trinity College in Dublin. Um, and I realized in May last year that talks are what I want to do. I find that it's great selling people or having these items, alternative items that people can buy, but I prefer to actually, I feel like I can achieve more by talking about them. And one of the areas that I'm really passionate about is periods and the whole stigma surrounding periods.
Yeah.
And I still do sell the period products, but that's all I sell now.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I've
So,
completely changed my
yeah.
business model. So
So I'm curious with this change, has it saved a lot of money, a lot of resources? Has it allowed you to kind of reallocate what you were doing before in a different direction?
yeah, it's definitely, I don't know if I've saved money. Certainly, like I don't have to worry about buying as much stock in anymore.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about that stock selling because the talks and workshops kind of are my main focus. And then I have the small amount of stock there on the website that people can access.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so I'm working with like the local council here, and we're doing some talks, and through those talks with the local libraries, we are supplying students in schools here in Waterford with free reusable cloth pads.
Yeah.
So we're helping to kind of bridge the period poverty gap that's there as well. Unfortunately, for such a rich country, Ireland is really bad in terms of period poverty, and even hygiene poverty is a huge issue for a lot of people. Specifically since COVID and the cost of living crisis, which has hit the entire world, I suppose.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
So the one thing I've read some books about African villages where they're trying to get water and they're trying to get basic necessities to live.
Mhm.
And the girls can't go to school because of hygiene issues. And I just, being a male and not being in that environment, it just didn't dawn on me, but it's so essential for everything, for these kids, because if they can, I mean, that's why there's so many girls in Africa that aren't educated because they literally can't go to school.
Yeah. And one of the companies that I work with, they're called EcoFem. So they make all the cloth pads that I stock. And I've been working with them for the past 5 years, and I love their product because what they do, they have like a pad for pad program. So when I buy the pads from them, I pay a pad for pad contribution, and they use that contribution to, excuse me, they use that contribution to supply young women in rural India with free cloth pads, and they through their educational programs. So they run programs on breaking the stigmatism surrounding periods, teaching the girls proper hygiene. The cloth pads are relatively easy to use because not a lot of the girls would have access to the facilities that we would, like running water, that kind of thing. So, um, and like that, similar in many cultures, periods are seen as dirty and that girls should be ashamed of them. Some women aren't even allowed to leave the house. Um, they're hidden away for like the 3 or 5 days every month. But it's also a thing here in Ireland. So there was a study done in 2018, and this study, the 1,100 girls were surveyed, and the study found that 50% between the ages of 12 and 19 found it difficult to pay for sanitary products. 61% have missed school as a result of having their period. 55% were embarrassed by their period. And about 10% were using not like alternatives to sanitary products,
Yeah.
to menstrual products. Not necessarily the best alternatives. So, but like a lot of 61% of girls missing school because they had their period, and probably because they just didn't have access to the products needed.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a great initiative here. So it's even in rich countries, there is this issue, and Ireland kind of also has this Catholic guilt, which is instilled. It's so deeply ingrained in Irish culture. It's definitely changing now, but certainly like in my parents' generation, my mum's 75 now, like in her day, it just wasn't talked about. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And this is something that 51% of the entire population on the planet will experience
Yeah.
at some stage throughout their life. And it's just, yeah, there's so much like education
Yeah.
that's needed, vital education. Um, the government introduced products, like free products here, free period products through the libraries. So you can go into any public library and you can get take as much as you want, okay, or as much as you need. But they're all disposables. So I did a talk in Trinity College in Dublin, and the students were saying that they got a grant and they were working with a small company in Cork. And this company were supplying organic cotton tampons and pads, but then the funding ran out. So those students no longer had access to these period products. Whereas if they were all reusables that were supplied, they'd still be using them and they would still have them because they can last for up to 5 years. So not only is there the environmental aspect, but it can also save you money in the long run. So I'm working with the council here in Waterford, the city council and the county council, and an initiative called Healthy Ireland. Um, so we're basically, they're buying the kits and I'm supplying the students and doing the talks. So with the reusable period products. So I don't think there's anywhere else in Ireland that's doing that
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
So let me go back in your life
Okay.
to when you were a kid.
Yeah.
What was your dream? What did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be an actress.
Okay.
And my background, I went to college and I studied film production and editing. I am an Apple certified video editor. Um, and I ran my own video production company for from 2008 until my son was born, 2015.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so my background is, so what I'm doing now is completely different to what I did back then. Um, but it stood to me because I generate my own content, and the editing skills have come in really handy. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I've done, like, where I am now is nowhere near, and obviously I still haven't got the whole acting thing off the ground. So
So let me ask you this. Take me back to your childhood. What were the
yeah.
seeds that were planted into you that have grown into you being an activist and providing awareness to the public? And how did you make this turn from acting and film into this pursuit now?
Honestly, it didn't really start until I was pregnant with my son, and I was researching like cloth nappies and using cloth nappies. Um, that's when it really started. I was like, wow, there's a lot of waste generated by just one child. Um, and then we just started making small little changes in our lives over the years. And then in 2019, I decided to just bite the bullet. But in terms of growing up, like, I mean, recycling back in Ireland in the 90s just wasn't really a thing.
Yeah,
I didn't really become environmentally aware until probably I was in college, I would say. Um, and I actually did went over to the States on like a J1, a student visa for the summer. So things are just really different over there.
yeah,
I was in New Jersey. Um, yeah, but Ireland, like I think since we joined the EU, a lot of things have changed, obviously. But also I don't think recycling is the answer either. But not so much my childhood. It was more kind of as an adult, I suppose.
yeah,
I really started when I was pregnant on my son. I really started reading more on like the environmental impacts, and obviously, you're bringing a tiny person into the world. You want to kind of, I suppose, I took more interest in what kind of a world I was bringing him into.
yeah.
Um, yeah, but like it's kind of thing I didn't even think about when I grew up, compared to what my kids come home from school telling me, and the stuff that they're learning. Um, Ireland's definitely come a long way, since my day in
Yeah.
school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It almost seems like what you're doing is kind of that model of like subscription based, kind of like Netflix model. Like it's all of everything adds up. And when I think about it, it's like what you're talking about. You on your end you're going to try to eliminate that waste. And if people would just adopt that and do a
Hmm.
few areas of their lives, there would
Hmm.
be a very massive impact. But it's just going to take those little things. And I think sometimes people think, well, what am I going to do? I'm just one person. But that's the point, right? I mean, everybody can do something together, and collectively it can become a movement.
That's it. I mean, but there's that quote, it's like, oh, it's just one straw, said 8 billion people. I mean, even, oh, I can't think of the stats now, but like, there is, I mean, the average baby, so the average birth rate in Ireland every year is 45,000. Okay. So if every one of those parents even used one cloth nappy a day, when you knew that you were going to be home and you knew you weren't going to leave the house. So if there was any accidents or leaks or anything, you'd be home, you could change the child, whatever. Um, but like one cloth nappy a day, 365 days times 45,000, that is a considerable amount of disposable nappies
Yeah.
that aren't going into landfill. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that is just like one nappy a day.
Yeah.
And the same with like the cloth pads. I mean, they have the potential to, um, sorry, Joe, give me 1 second now.
Yeah. No worries.
Um, I'm going to give you the actual stats
Sure.
um, that I have here. So sorry, I just have to bring it
No, you're
up.
fine.
Um, how am I doing so far? This is my first podcast.
Oh, wow. No, you're doing wonderful. This is excellent.
Okay. Okay,
You're
I
doing
hope I
really
answered
good.
your questions okay. I tend to waffle a bit.
No, you're fine. That's good. What you're
Yeah.
doing in that process is kind of knocking down all these little dominoes that I'm putting in a little racetrack. So it's like
Okay,
if
good.
if I don't get to that question, it's because you knocked it down early on. So it's good.
Okay. Oh, good. Okay. Yeah, so the 120 kits that I've distributed to students through my talks so far have the potential to save 39,000 disposables
Wow.
ending up in landfills and waterways. And it'll in turn save families 78,000 euro over the next 5 years. And that's only 120 kids,
Yeah. Yeah.
120 girls and people. So, and that's just one class in one school,
Yep.
or like four different schools, four different classes of 30 kids. It's, that's the impact that such a small number can have. So you can imagine, I mean, there's 5,000 students altogether in Waterford schools, primary and secondary schools. So you can imagine the impact that 5,000 of those kids could have,
Absolutely.
and the amount of money that it would save, and that like it would save the companies and the councils and the country money as well,
Yeah.
because obviously they're getting hiring engineer firms to try and fix the issues with the old waterway systems, and improve them. And a lot of those issues are coming from disposables
Yeah.
being flushed, whether it's cloth white or wipes. People cut up nappies and flush nappies, because they don't want to pay in charges. Obviously a lot of period products are in there as well. So there's a lot of stuff being flushed that shouldn't be flushed.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it just has to like it's just a no-brainer to me. I just don't know why it hasn't snowballed, I
Yeah.
suppose.
Well, we're going to do our little part here, and you're doing a big part with the work you're doing. So,
Mhm.
in any pursuit that we do in life, there's always an inspirational figure, kind of a hero that's there. Who is that for you in your work? Do you have one?
No,
Okay.
none that I can think of really. Like there's, oh God, that's a really hard question because I can't just pinpoint like one person.
Well, how about this?
Um,
How about this? If is there anyone out there in the world of activism or doing something that's going to globally be beneficial to all of us that you would like to meet, to see how they do, to just have a portal into how they work that may benefit you?
I think Greta Thunberg has like just really brought um I'd love to meet her. She's an amazing young woman.
Yeah,
Um and I think that she has really shone a light on the state of the world.
yeah,
I know a lot of people give out about the Just Stop Oil activists, but yes, some of the stuff is extreme, but I mean, if we keep going the way we're going, obviously there is no such thing as art on a dead planet. Um, I don't actually know any names of who's involved in Just Stop Oil, but I understand some people are like, oh, they're interrupting, performances on stage and on Broadway. And it's like, well, you know, I get it.
yeah,
But also, I think people need escapism as well. Um, so Greta is kind of bringing a bit more awareness without being as disruptive, I suppose.
yeah. I agree. So let me.
Um,
Yeah, no,
yeah,
I agree. Yeah, no, I think she's doing wonderful work, and so
wonderful
I'm
work.
curious. With what you're doing, you're dealing with something heavy. You're giving of yourself. You didn't get into this line of work to make a lot of money and to do things, right? I mean, you're out there trying to help people and make an
Yeah,
impact. So I'm
yeah.
curious, how do you what gets you up every day? What motivates you to do this work? And also, you have to evolve as a human being. What is that collective energy for you every day to do this work?
For me, every day, I'll be honest, it's not always easy getting up in the mornings. But one of the things that has really kind of driven me since I started doing these talks is the feedback that I've been getting from the students. So I supply them with like a questionnaire, and they answer the questions basically: how do they feel coming into the workshop? How do they feel after the workshop? Do they feel that their confidence levels in discussing periods has improved? That kind of thing. And the statistics that I have um, are kind of speaking for themselves, which is great. So I've essentially spoken to about 208 girls so far. Um, and like 45% felt nervous or embarrassed coming in, 33% were curious or excited, 20% felt fine. And then after the workshop, like 59% are feeling more confident, slightly more confident and informed. 62% found that their confidence levels in discussing periods had increased. And 31% kind of felt the same as before. So I'm seeing and it's only a small amount of students, but I'm seeing the numbers. So that's actually given me a boost. And then I get all these, they can write their own feedback and comments at the end of the forums. They're not always pretty, but the vast majority of them are really, really nice. And yeah, it just talking to them and hearing their stories and seeing them opening up as the talks progress. And it's only like an hour.
Yeah.
Um, seeing the impact that it's having is amazing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so it's the only reason I get out of bed because let's
Yeah.
be honest, I'm not really making a lot of money from it,
Yeah.
but
Right.
I'm probably like the worst businesswoman in the world, but that's not why I'm doing it. And it would be lovely to make a career out of it, a paid career out of it, but um that's what I'm trying to do. But obviously it'll be a while before I get there, but certainly the feedback that's coming back from the talks that I'm doing and from the teachers as well is definitely what's keeping me going on like the hardest days. So,
So at the end of the day, when you look at the arc of what you've done in your career and your life up to this point, what are you the proudest of?
um, my kids.
Of course.
Yeah, they're 7 and 9. They're a lot more clued in than I was at that age.
Yeah.
I definitely think the tide is changing. They're learning a lot more in school with regards to the environment and stuff like that. And some of the stuff that they're coming out with, I mean, it's common sense and it makes me proud because I mean, I know so many adults that even refuse to think that way. Do you know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And it's pretty much just unlearning what we've been brought up to believe.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people out there who just refuse to even take that into account or to refuse to unlearn what they grew up knowing. Yeah, so my it might sound like a bit of a cliche, but my kids they do teach you a lot
Yeah.
for
They cer
sure,
Yeah.
especially to be humble.
Yeah. They certainly do. So
Yeah.
at the end of the day, as the face of this movement, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, everyone that hears you speak, everyone that gets involved with your mission, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Oh God, that's another hard question. I'm I don't I don't know. Irish people aren't very good at self-praise.
I got, yeah,
I yeah, I think what I bring to the talks is um I'm not really one for big words. I prefer simplicity. And I think being um showing the some confidence in that I know what I'm talking about, but also like being approachable um is really important, especially with the students and the girls and getting them to open up and asking their questions. So it is nice knowing that they can approach me after the talk if they want their questions answered and that they can ask those questions and that they feel safe with me to ask those questions and confident. Um, so yeah, I think my openness and my ability to talk to them as grown-ups as well is definitely helps. And that would be one of my strengths. I suppose communication, open communication.
yeah,
But I think that's the most important thing for everyone, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. So if anyone wants to get involved, you've done a wonderful job of kind of orchestrating a good overview. If anyone out there wants to help, get involved, has questions, reach out, catch you live speaking,
Yeah.
how can they do that?
They can head to my website, youme.ie. I have a bit of information there. I am working on getting a bit of corporate funding and getting some local corporations to sponsor kits for students in Irish schools. Yeah, so they can reach me on the website or I'm on Instagram and TikTok. I set up a Substack. I'm looking to get away from Meta a bit, but
Yeah.
honestly, I don't know how to. I haven't even looked at Substack yet, so
Cool. I get it. I
I don't
totally get
know.
it. Yeah. This is
I don't know
great.
how it works, so don't
Yeah.
follow me on Substack, but come find me on TikTok or
Okay. I
Instagram.
will put links in the show notes to all of this.
Hmm.
Amy, you did wonderful. Thank you so much for your
Oh,
message, your
thank you,
story.
Joe.
Best of luck. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.